Welcome to the Pregnancy Help Podcast. I'm Christine Grimmett. I'm here with Heartbeat International's president, Jarrell Godsey, and we have a few special guests with us as we celebrate 10 years of Pregnancy Help News. And if you're a regular listener to the podcast, you know that we host the monthly Pregnancy Help News Brief episodes, and we regularly point to pregnancyhelpnews.com as your go-to news outlet for coverage of all things pregnancy help around the world. And as we recognize the 10-year anniversary this year, we're going to have a little fun in this episode and look back on where it all began. So we have Kirk Weldon and Jay Hobbs joining us, and they have so much to tell. But Jarrell, I'm going to start with you. How did Pregnancy Help News come to be?
Yeah, it's amazing. 10 years, Christine. Thanks for the opportunity to talk about this. It's a very cool story with a lot of twists and turns, but it starts really at a meeting. We had some board members that traveled into the Heartbeat offices. We were doing kind of a SWOT analysis. We were talking about things like paid media, earned media, owned media, stuff that I didn't know what kind of media we were talking about. But it started to make sense when, and I always kind of felt a little challenged by the fact that we had pro-life media that talked a lot about the abortion issue. And I would always get excited when there was a little mention of what was happening in a pregnancy help center, a pregnancy help organization, but then frustrated that there wasn't more. There was so many good things happening among the pregnancy center world, among the maternity homes, among our affiliates, but they would always kind of get swamped by the bigger abortion politics, the abortion question, the kind of the supply side conversation that abortion invites. But never or rarely about the demand side that we work on, which is helping women find other alternatives. And it was in that meeting when we were talking about we were doing a SWOT analysis, we realized like, wait a minute, maybe we can do that. Maybe that's something that we could pioneer. And Jay was in the room with me at the time. We were having this discussion, and it's like, let's get this launched. And turn to Jay, and I'm like, can we do this? And he's like, we can do it. And then we jumped in right away and started making it happen. So from a germ of an idea that was really in the midst of a strategic conversation with some board members came this idea that became Pregnancy Help News. And so we kicked it off. We kicked it off at a very interesting time. We started in January of 2015, which little did we know there was going to be some big things happening. And we had just the right guy at the time to just grab it and run with it, and that was our good friend Jay Hobbs, who was in that director of communications at the time. And he's like, write? Can I write? Yes, I can write, because sure, Jay's a great writer, and I was able to tackle this. And so Jay, like, give me your perspective on that those early days of the idea, the concept, and what it was like to get it started.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Jarrell. It's a privilege to join you guys and to talk with the audience. It's kind of surreal to talk on a podcast that's based on Pregnancy Help News and bringing it to a new format, a new media. It's probably not new for a lot of you listeners, but when you think back 10 years, it's come a long ways. So, yeah, from my perspective. When we were in those early talks and trying to figure out what we were doing, what we're going to talk about, we knew that, like Jarrell said, pregnancy centers only got brought up here and there, very sparingly within the largely electoral politics version of abortion as a larger issue. So we wanted to, from early on, start to try to break into kind of different concentric circles. So we wanted to make Pregnancy Help News, basically those stories of pregnancy centers and pregnancy help organizations, transcend from our own little bubble into the pro-life media, beyond that to Christian media, and then beyond that to conservative media. And we figure that's probably where we're going to end up, as a moonshot. So although we have, over the years, we had some harebrained ideas and almost got published at the Mercury News in San Jose, and almost got published at a few other places that were near misses. But in terms of really getting pregnancy centers into the conversation, and from a personal perspective, coming to Heartbeat, I joined in 2012 and had been grown up in the church, gone to a Baptist college, gone to seminary for a couple years, and I had never actually heard of a pregnancy center by the time I joined Heartbeat International. So I don't know if they were hiring the best and brightest at the time, but it just wasn't something that ever came up for me. And so I knew that within a week of working at Heartbeat, I was like, I wish I had known about pregnancy centers before, or encountered something about them before. So I want somebody coming up behind me and, in my stage of life to actually know what to say to, youth. I was doing youth ministry at the time and still do some of that. We want to know where to refer people. We want to know even where to get kids volunteering and what they can be praying for. Not just generally an end to abortion, but attached to that, figuring out like how to help women in your community. And so that had just the thought had never crossed my mind, and I wanted to make sure that we were going to do something about that long term. And I think by God's grace, we're starting to chip away at that. When you look at the stories that get covered and the way that pregnancy centers are just a little bit more in the mainstream of conservative media now than they certainly ever were before.
Yeah, and Pregnancy Help News has played a part in that in big ways. There's been some big stories that we've covered over the years. We'll talk about those in a minute. But there was this idea also. We really had an initial goal, a vision was could we even put out 2 things a week, right? That wasn't, did we have enough to write on like every week, and not just every week, but twice a week? And fun thing now is 10 years later, we probably put out 15 to 20 things every week. And so it certainly has grown. But then it was a real commitment. And Jay took the horns of that and was able to write some things. We had some good stories that came out of Babies Go to Congress that we knew was a good thing. We had some good opportunities to convey the messages that we were talking about pregnancy centers. But we also wanted a kind of an anchor for those initial phrase. And when thinking about who's going to anchor us as a writer, we turned to a longtime friend, Kirk Walden, and because Kirk's got something to say about everything. And if you doubt that, just come up with any subject next time you run into him, wing it at him. He's got an opinion, and he'll usually deliver it in a way that's really fun. But he has been kind of a stalwart of communicating to the pregnancy help movement for many, many years. Dare I say, going back to the last millennia. But when we were launching this new idea, we said, we really want a kind of a positive commentary about what's going on, but also one that cuts through, really makes a difference, really communicates to the heart of our audience, which is at its core is always the pregnancy help audience, which could be the donor that's supporting a center. Of course, it's the folks that are in the center, and then of course the larger community as well. And so Kirk jumped on in that commentary. Kirk, you committed to it early on, and we're grateful for that, and carried it for many, many years. And help me understand what you saw as that initial gap that we were filling with the Pregnancy Help News.
Well, first, thank you for the backhanded compliments about how I always have something to say about everything. But I do. I love to write. I got a journalism degree from Auburn and War Eagle for those who follow football and all those sorts of things. But that was my background, was a journalism degree, and I loved hammering out stories and those sorts of things. So when Jay came to me and you came to me and said, "Hey, how about writing something on a regular basis?" I was excited because like you, I believe that if our story gets out there, people are going to see another side. There just wasn't a space for pregnancy centers and all of this. And I'm echoing what you said, but we needed a place where people realize pregnancy centers are not only in the middle of this. In many ways, we lead the conversation of making abortion unthinkable, because we are the ones, the hands and feet, the compassion end of this, and we're reaching in on the ground, because a lot of things that go on in Washington are vitally important, but at the same time, they're not looking into the eyes of that young lady who's facing a decision, the biggest decision of her life, or a young couple that has no idea what they've just walked into when they get that positive pregnancy test. And we are the ones doing that, and we are the ones offering the help. And so to tell that story was exciting for me and say, hey, we can do this. And it's all over, as a boomer, it's like the World Wide Webosphere. And so that was exciting to me to be a part of that. And I laugh when you say that we were trying to get 2 articles a week, and then Jay threw out this big idea: what if we could do 1 a day? And I think, man, this is just incredible. But I was in there once a week for about 7 years. I was already on staff with Heartbeat when this started up, and I was like, hey, let's jump on board this thing. And finding something to write about each week was not difficult, because when you look across the country and around the world at what we are doing, there's always something new. There's always a center opening. There's always a change in services, a growth. And as we reach out to more and more, I mean, we were seeing the mobile units take charge back then, and we were seeing a lot of different things. And we also saw a point where politics came for us. We were trying to get in this space and saying, hey, is there a place for us in the pro-life news? Yes, pregnancy help news. But then something big happened when politics in California came to us. And at that point, we realized we were onto something.
Yeah, great segue into really what happened almost right away within a few months was the launch of AB 775. A California State Assembly was intent upon forcing pregnancy centers to really voice the message of the abortion industry. They wanted to have signs posted. The state made this law, and that gave us something to write about. And boy, did we write. Jay wrote. I mean, I think his typewriter was working around the clock in those times, because it was a lot of material, a lot of different angles, different perspectives. Heartbeat was not in the lawsuit, which actually gave us a lot of freedom to really cover a lot of aspects, and that really pushed us into some interesting arenas. Jay, I know we got more reprints following that, or in the months that followed from that got us in all kinds of places.
Yeah, we did, and as an expatriate of California, I took this personally, that my home state was coming after pregnancy centers, and early on was in pretty consistent contact with ladies like Marie Leatherby out there in Sacramento area, and a few others, and Scott down in Murrieta, and just all of these folks that were from all walks of life, doing all kinds of great work. And now that we're pulled into really the need of the hour, which was advocacy for their centers and for their work, and it was great to see the really just God's providence working through the fact that we had set up this news outlet, and we were on the lookout for stories. We were on the lookout to promote what pregnancy centers do, and then as always happens, what the enemy means for evil, God means for good. And
That's right.
So I think this AB 775, which became Nifla v. Becerra before the Supreme Court, really it was an affirmation of free speech rights, not only for pregnancy centers but for all Americans. All of that starts with some clowns in Sacramento that have really bad ideas, coming from very bad places, and we're thankful for it long term.
That and what got me about this whole thing is that we were able to amplify the fact that if this law remained on the books, if we lost this battle, dozens and hundreds of pregnancies, I don't know if it's 100, but probably 100 pregnancy centers in California would have a choice. They either advertise for free abortions through Medi-Cal right there in their offices in 30 languages I think they had to do, or if they wouldn't do it, they would have to close their doors, face huge fines, or close their doors. And we had to get the word out. They're coming for us. Can you imagine? One of our most populous, if not the most populous state, I can't remember if it's New York or California, but don't ask me to do all that stuff. But I know this. you shut down California, and people in Illinois, which they were trying to pass the same law. They were moving it through at the same time. We were going to be in a difficult, dire situation if we don't win this case. And I think Pregnancy Help News played a role in amplifying this because there's so much news going on out there about so many things that people just don't notice. But Jay kept hammering it home and letting people know this is a huge deal. And when NIFLA got involved, Tom Glessner, Annie O'Connor there got involved and started working on this project and taking it all the way to the Supreme Court. We were there every step of the way, Jay, you especially. So this was it not only amplified this whole issue, but it also took Pregnancy Help News to a new level because people were looking to see what we were going to put out there next.
Yeah, that's so true. That was kind of an unintended win, something we didn't really plan on. We were intent upon writing to the audience that we wanted to reach, but suddenly there were folks that were getting they were reprinting what we were writing. They were grabbing information and placing it in their publication. So that's where we get to, I think even Newsweek grabbed one. You know, we were reaching over that season. We were reaching like more than 1 million people with the message that pregnancy centers are good and they ought not be constrained by the state. And so that was a very powerful time to do it. Grateful for our friends at NIFLA to fight that legal battle, and we were blessed to be able to join them with kind of the communication side of that. Fun fact about that originally started out as NIFLA v. Harris. You might know that name from some other venues, but came Becerra, and then Becerra went on to be HHS director. So that we had a lot of connections to that. And there was this moment. I still remember walking. So we had someone that was visiting from some other state. They were here in Ohio at our headquarters. And I remember walking through the hallways, and I was like, oh, and introducing them to Heartbeat people. And then they said, oh, and this is Jay Hobbs. And like, Jay Hobbs. Like, oh, wow, I want to shake his hand. Like, so like just the fact that Jay had been working so hard to get information out really, as he said, took this personal and really went after this with the gusto that it needed and that it required. And as this particular incident moved through the law all the way up to the Supreme Court, we were able to be a part of that all along the way, and of course celebrated with our friends Tom and Ann at NIFLA. You know, when the court case was settled, we were able to be there and celebrate that, and it was just a great day in 2018, I believe. So like that was a gift that we were able to follow with Pregnancy Help News. It kind of really created the foundation for PH News and our ability to do that. And I just want to commend Jay again and Kirk. You guys were all a part of that and helping echo that message around. We had some other stuff going on, and we had this is a little told story. We had, although it's been written on a little bit, we had a tangle also with the California Board of Nursing over APR. And that created some interesting dynamics that we were able to tackle. There's a lot of twists and turns to that. That was another thing, also a California-inspired adventure of challenging APR we were able to speak to.
Yeah, I was born in California, so Jay, it's not just you, man. I only lived there 4 years. My parents escaped in '66, but but yeah, a lot going on there too, Jay.
Yeah, I mean the California Board of Nursing coming after nurses who have gone through through their schooling have gone into the profession to help people, and in this case to help women and children. The fact that they would threaten these women with their licenses and that they would use that as a power play is it's beyond galling, and this has definitely become a play that the left has used in counseling and in a lot of other situations we're seeing more and more of that throughout the country. But the California Board of Nursing was definitely early on in that, and so it was another opportune moment for us at Heartbeat and Pregnancy Help News to really push back and establish the fact that, like Jarrell said, pregnancy help centers are good for America. They're good for these women who need help, and we are the true choice that women are looking for. And so when you're looking at abortion pill reversal in particular, you're looking at a woman who has started down one choice and now has the opportunity to make another choice, and that choice is life, and it's all with the hope that she would be able to hold her child and raise that child. And the fact that a state would try to intervene in that and stop a woman from making a choice to save her baby's life is it's a logical end to abortion, but it's a bridge too far. And so that was another season where we were honored and privileged to push back hard, and that obviously that fight still continues with abortion pill reversal. But we know, not to steal Jarrell's thunder, because I know he's gonna highlight the numbers here, but 7,000 babies saved by abortion pill reversal, and that's just the ones we know about. And my wife actually works for abortion pill reversal, and she has for the last going on 7 years. These are women that desperately need help, and they desperately need a choice to be able to do the right thing. And so if we're not there to help them, if a state is going to stop us from helping them, then it's beyond time that we stood up to them.
I think a word you've used several times is choice. And I think it's just fantastic because part of Pregnancy Help News is, to use a word I've used a lot, amplifies the fact that we are the home of choice. We've been told about we believe in choice, and yet that one thing, abortion, is that choice that the other side continues to talk about. And yet when we saw abortion pill reversal, we began adopting that, and it came under Heartbeat's umbrella, everything breaks loose, and there's anger, and there's vitriol, and there's every effort to block what? Choice. Because just like you said, Jay, we're offering a choice to somebody who made one decision, and now you have another choice. And I think Pregnancy Help News helped bring that out over those years, and still does today.
It does, and we are able to focus on a number of landmark events as over the years, over the 10 years. Those are the key ones in the early years. Was certainly AB 775, as it was kind of creating that path to the Supreme Court, starting in California. But those years were key. And I think our ability to message or even convey others' message, we also reprinted others who were commenting on this in Pregnancy Help News, kind of compiling all the information in one place, believing that this was a great source for our community to access and get that information. We also hit some milestones along the way we reported on. You mentioned the 7,000. We were excited Pregnancy Help News was there to talk about 2,000 and 3,000 and 4,000 as we've gone through those. Talk about our option line wins as well, the 3 million mark, the 4 million mark of people we've been able to reach through option line over the years. Now we're up to almost 7 million. So there's some great milestones that Pregnancy Help News has been able to be at the forefront as well. And Jay, you've had some also been able to both of you, Jay and Kirk, have been able to write some powerful stories of successes at local centers. Anyone in particular come to mind that you recall?
Sorry, Kirk.
No, go ahead.
The first one that comes to my mind, when I think about Pregnancy Help News, is a story we wrote. It was an Arizona pregnancy center, or New Mexico. I don't know. Those states blur together. So apologies to the Southwest. But,
not to them. Not to them.
Yeah, not to them. They don't. But the story was, it was a woman named April, and she had 3 or 4 kids, and was pregnant with either 4 or 5, and had was going to choose abortion because she was worried about car seats and the number of car seats. And, going back to what I said earlier, having never worked in a pregnancy center, having never, been in that situation, and, familiar with that sort of on the ground desperation, that was one of those conversations that as I'm sitting there on the phone talking to this woman, I was astonished and really blown away that these are the things these are the things that are going through a woman's mind and in that time of decision. So I think just having that conversation and hearing her story and how the pregnancy center there helped her really to calm down and think through what was going on in her life and just project out, 6 months from where she was, 2 months from where she was, and how that was able, the folks there were able to help her save her baby's life. And that was just a powerful conversation to hear that from someone who was just there very recently.
Yeah. And I think I don't have a specific story, but I think the overall frame of reference that people see through Pregnancy Help News are the many people who come into our centers. They do not believe in themselves until somebody looks them in the eye and says, "But I believe in you, and you can do this." And if you go through the articles, that's the theme you're going to see a lot of times. I believe in you. And many of us are at times in our lives we don't believe in ourselves. We don't think we can do something until somebody looks at us, sits with us, listens to us and says, "You can do this. And we will be there with you every step of the way." And I think that's what Pregnancy Help News brings to the table that sometimes we miss in the political, which again is important, but we miss that. Somebody is there, and as Peggy has said over the years, the best answer to a woman facing an unexpected pregnancy is another person. So that's what we talk about.
Absolutely, and that's really almost the mission of Pregnancy Help News is to maintain that posture and attitude. Yeah, we'll certainly highlight the political stuff as well. It's as we often say, I should say, as Cicero said, or Pericles, one of those ancient Roman guys said, a couple of millennia ago, you may not be interested in politics, but politics is interested in you, and that has never been more true in the last 10 years that Pregnancy Help News has been around. So it's like we find ourselves even today with the most pregnancy centers that are in lawsuits with states around the country. Fortunately, some of those are reactive, but most of those are proactive in some way. And that's just shows you like how intense the conversation is around pregnancy centers, around pregnancy help organizations. And I'm so grateful that Pregnancy Help News has been able to be a part of that and speak to those things. But at the same time, maintaining that belief, the reality of helping women. One is that we've had news articles about new locations opening, satellites opening, launching of mobile units, all kinds of fun things, both national and international as well. I know we've had some of those stories and continue to do that. Any last thoughts, Jay? You and Kirk were there at the beginning. Anything that you want to highlight that we haven't talked about yet?
Go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, no, I think just the opportunity to, as Kirk said, amplify and really tell the story of local pregnancy centers has just been such a huge privilege in my life, and it's something I've been honored to do, and take with me on a day-to-day basis. I think the amount of talent that the Lord has to give to a pregnancy center director is astounding. The number of plates that you have spinning, and then to have to oftentimes to put on a different hat of dealing with the client and following up with her and her family and her situation. I know it's much easier to turn off the light switch at 5:01 and walk out and go home. And I know that is a calling from the Lord to be able to withstand the stress that is on your families, and it's just a great gift of the Lord to your community and to those women and to those families that you're there. So thank you. That's always been my message.
Which is just perfect, because when you look at what we wanted to do in the beginning, it was not only to tell the story of pregnancy centers, but it was also to build up pregnancy centers. When we write those articles about a new center opening over here, or about a renovation project or a new initiative or something like that, it encourages these nearly 3,000 centers or 3,000 plus centers across this country and around the world to say, if they can do it, we can do it too. And I think Pregnancy Help News has also bonded us together more in a unified fashion to say, hey, we're in this thing together. And there are a lot of directors, Jay, that you just talked about who are saying, am I alone in this? And they can open up Pregnancy Help News every morning and say, no, I'm not alone. That's happening over there, and that's not too far from me. And maybe if they can do it, I can do it too. So it's been an encouragement, I think, for Pregnancy Help Ministries as well.
Excellent. I was just visiting one of our affiliates in where we're going to be having our next conference, and I was visiting them, and I was making sure I was talking to board members, and I'm not always sure that they're plugged in. And I said, have you heard of Pregnancy Help News? And they're like, oh yes, I get my coffee every Sunday morning, and I sit down and I go through, and I'm like, there it is. Like, that's exactly what we wanted, to be that kind of resource to pregnancy help organizations everywhere. Thank you guys for joining us to remember the beginning of something that's become very, very important to not just Heartbeat, but to the whole Pregnancy Help Network.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jay and Kirk. Great to have you on. And Jarrell, we'll see you on our next episode. We're going to do a part 2 and talk about what's happened since then, this early couple of years, and kind of where Pregnancy Help News is at now currently and where we're looking towards in the future. So I hope our listeners join us. The best way to hear about when that next episode is published is to subscribe to the Pregnancy Help podcast. And of course, we want you to share this with your friends as well, because it's such a great story to tell. And check out Pregnancy Help News if you have not done that yet as well. With that, thank you all. Have a great rest of your day. And thanks for listening to this episode of the Pregnancy Help Podcast.